good morrow and good day, and welcome to another campaign diary and Q&A here on Slice and Dice, talking about everything that went down in the last couple of sessions. That's sessions 50 and 51. So, as well as talking about that today, I'm also going to be touching a bit on The Cage, which is the second campaign that started only a couple of weeks ago on our YouTube channel. As you can see, there's the note there about that. And what will be coming next week in our week off, just to kind of keep you in the loop as to what to expect then, and possibly a little taster of what's going to be coming back when we are back. So, with all that in mind, let's get straight into it with session 50. Here are my notes. So, session 50 started kind of at the end of session 49's cliffhanger, where the manticores were about to attack the party. They swooped in, three of them, with one in the lead, slightly larger than the rest, a few scars, clearly the leader, and with a noticeable ring upon one of his paws. So we had only Malar and Fleeting Look, the two, I guess, I'd say the divine touched, I guess, the cleric and the paladin, being that they derive their spell casting ability from divine powers, from the gods. Were the only ones standing to face down the manticores as the others went to hide, including the two Aarakocra that the manticores were looking for, who we've now established are Kerr and Beak. I rolled on the table to see how they did on their stealth checks, and I rolled 2 dice at once, and it was 2 natural 20s, unheard of. Absolutely insane. Anyway, so they were very well hidden from the manticores. But the manticores, of course, had at this point seen one of them in the sky anyway, hence they were coming into that location. You may recall from session 49, one of them being in the sky and then warning the party that the manticores were coming. So, they knew they were there, it was just they didn't know where exactly in that vicinity they were. And that led to a very short conversation with Malar kind of trying to negotiate his way out of it and say, oh, we're delivering them back to their home by ourselves, which, whilst well-intentioned, probably didn't go down so well with the manticores, who, are not going to trust others to do their job for them, and so unsurprisingly resulted in an encounter in a combat situation. And full credit to the party, really, because combat encounter balancing is a very fine, delicate art, and it's not an exact science. It can be quite difficult to get it right. And I think for the most part, the fact that the manticores, there were 3 of them, they're quite tough. The leader in particular was tough. But all 3 of them get 3 attacks. So in terms of action economy, that's 9 attacks for the enemy, and then for the party, there's 5 of them turning up. As it turns out, 6, because there was a 6th one who was on their way there just as that was happening. And a couple of them have multi-attacks. So it seemed roughly even to me, 8 to maybe 9 attacks. But rapidly, the party demolished the manticores. And it's been apparent for a while that this party is, in combat situations at least, is very, very good. They are... they have deadly force and know how to use it. And so, full credit to them. It didn't take long for them to overcome the manticores. And in fact, 2 of them, including the leader, tried to escape and were brought down as they tried to do so. So clearly quite a party to contend with. And that's good for me as well, like to kind of get a gauge on how, what kind of challenge I can put up against them and how they'll do with that in the future. And it can kind of help to know what level they're at, but then equally to then know how to then not only offer them balanced encounters, but to then offer imbalanced encounters, to know when things are going to be too easy or too hard. And I'm a firm believer that in the campaign, yes, the player characters are the central figures, but that doesn't mean that every combat should be catered to them or catered to be difficult for them or what have you. It should be that it makes sense in the world that you're in. So for an example, if a level 2 party, say, stumbles into the lair of a Tarask, which Tarask, for those of you who don't know, massive dinosaur type being that's just a horrific number of hit points and deadly and just all kinds of nonsense. Throwing that against the level 2 party, is ridiculous and unbalanced. However, if this level 2 party were looking for a Tarask and they stumbled into the lair of a Tarask, that's what's going to happen. Like, you can't sugarcoat it if that's what they choose to do. That it's free will. There should be fights that are harder. There should be fights that are simpler. There should be times that fighting can be completely cut out altogether and maneuvered around, and there are other ways to solve encounters rather than just through combat. So it's always good to kind of keep that in mind, to being true to the world that the players and the characters are inhabiting, rather than offering up stuff that suits the level that you're at. I think if you look at it kind of a video game analogy, I guess, with if you've played the Elder Scrolls series, for instance, with your character in that, as you level up, the monsters you encounter in the wild get tougher. And whilst that's nice for a video game, that means that you can keep on challenging yourself, keep on building up your experience points, keep leveling up and so on. It's kind of, for me, there's a little bit of the realism is taken away in that respect, because you're very much aware you're in a video game, and so everything is catered around you. You are the center of that universe. And in D&D, I feel like with the world that's being built, that's being created, the world that the players are inhabiting, the player characters are important, but they're not the center of that world. The world lives and breathes without them. They are just exploring it, and that makes it more believable, that makes it more immersive and challenging. And so there should be, at times, encounters that are going to be too difficult for the party to win at. They've got to lose sometimes. Failure is the best teacher. There's got to be some that there's got to be a mix, basically. There's got to be some that are too hard, some that are too easy, and some that are right in the middle and somewhere sort of on that sliding scale. Variety is the spice of life in world building, so it seems. And anyway, so I thought that this encounter was going to be pretty well balanced, and as it turned out, the party were a lot tougher, a lot better equipped to deal with it, because, of course, aside from action economy, they've got magic items on their side, and, they're good at what they do. Fair play to them. And they did. They overcame those manticores with a little help from our second ever guest on the stream, guest star, with Angelique and her character, Brina, the Sverfneblin, the deep gnome wizard. I'll touch more on her, because there's a lot to talk about with that character, and bringing in guest characters, and probably I'm hoping that maybe can inspire you guys as well for any games that you're running, about the logistics and how it can work, bringing in a guest, bringing in a new PC into your game, and the kind of the pros and cons, I guess, of that. But anyway, back to the recap. So after all three of the manticores were slain, it then was left to Seth to scavenge, take what he could from the manticore's body parts and so on that he can use for his own ends. He decided to take their spiked tails, because those spikes work pretty well as kind of javelins, so it could be useful, perhaps. And I think more to the point, what brought up a lot of questions was the appearance of this gnome, this deep gnome. So Brina appeared out of a rock. She appeared from the Underdark, as she hails from a place called Sverfhaven down in the Underdark. And yes, there was some inspiration from the Smurfs and the Trolls in the kind of the Sverfneblin of the Many Lands. But the appearances are not always what they seem. So whilst they may appear to be very much like the Smurfs and the Trolls, there's something very unique and original about them. So they're not just these whimsical characters. But not Brina. Brina is an exception. He is so whimsical and joyful and full of this positive energy. And it was so nice, kind of a breath of fresh air, really, to kind of bring her into the fold with the party in that. So it was time to kind of introduce her to the party, because she was on her way up to the surface anyway for her own reasons, which are fully disclosed in session 51. That basically, she, like Fleeting Look, has spoken to, or at least been in contact with, Keith, otherwise known as Omenak, the god of truth. So there's something that they already have in common together, that they talk to a god. And anyway, Keith has told her, like Fleeting Look, to look for a trunk that does not belong. And it would appear that this tree that they're looking for is in the direction of this mountain that they're now trying to find, it, the Eyrie. One of the first things that was obvious with Brina was her reservations about the Aarakocra that the party were in company with, and there's a whole history between the Aarakocra and the Sverfnebelin, which have kind of got to create for the character and kind of embed that in the world, and it was such a joy to do. It really, for me, was like another excuse to kind of get the creative juices flowing. Really kind of gives you a second wind, if you like, to do some more world building and so on, and just kind of keep things fresh and interesting by bringing somebody new into the mix. So yeah, I will very much. 1 second, we will get to that on the PCs, bringing new PCs. But before we get to that, as soon as Brina was introduced, I had promised in session 50 that we were going to roll a fake dice. For those of you who, as you can see on the suggestions there, hashtag fake dice, we periodically roll fake dice during a session as the gods intervene in whatever way they choose, with the luck of the dice determining what happens. And it just so happened that the fake dice that was rolled was to do with a character falling madly and deeply in love with a person who uses a charm or flirting kind of technique. And it just so happens we kind of adapted that very slightly, so that Brina, as introducing herself to the group, immediately love at first sight with one of the party members. And as it turned out, that was Brucon, which was very fitting because Brucon the dwarf was doing all kinds of stunts, as is his whim, and just being suitably impressive. And she was awe-inspired, thinking, oh, he's so cool. So although I did roll to see which character she would be falling madly in love with, as per the fake dice, it just made so much that it fitted so well with what had already been established about the character in that moment. So it was just a really nice moment, and it was kind of I would say I wouldn't encourage doing that too often, like forcing a character, a PC, into thinking a certain way, but just for the sheer joy and fun of it. I think Angelique fully embraced that going into it, and it was just made for a great bit of RP. So yeah, it was really good fun to kind of bring that into the mix, and what an introduction to the party, to kind of appear out of the ground with this just cute little face, just full of joy, falling on her face because she's got -1 dexterity. It was just a lot of fun, and I think that it's that kind of naivety and kind of cute, whimsical nature that I think it doesn't suit any of the party members, so it's completely unique to her. And I think that it was what was really nice about that, what we've seen in the last 2 sessions, is that's kind of brought the rest of the party out of their shell a little bit, because they're now having to communicate with somebody in a different way. There's been a lot of characters who the party have suspected had other sort of ulterior motives, I guess, that were a bit false, didn't say what they meant, underhanded dealings and so on, or just the other side, bonkers, annoying, all over the place, all kinds of interesting characters. But we haven't had like that kind of cute factor, and especially being somebody in the party as well, or joining up with the party. So to have them kind of communicate with her added a different dynamic to the group. And I think that for some of the more serious party members, they're a bit more, let's say, morally neutral rather than good. It kind of brought them back a bit. It humanized them a little bit, because I guess in the same way as like having a child in the mix. When you start talking to a child, your inner child can come out in that sense. And I feel like with Brina, the inner cutesy good person kind of came out of most of the party members in one respect or another. So the pros and cons with introducing a guest star, a new PC to your group, who have already established. So one of the first things is that it helps solidify the main party, because they're then having to introduce themselves to this new party member. They're going to have to catch them up on things that have already happened, and it works in that sense as a little nostalgia, a little reminder of how far the rest of the party has come up until that point, that they can kind of relate, and they can talk about their experiences up to this point, their shared experiences as a party. That new party member kind of, can start asking all the very innocent questions that the party wouldn't have occurred to them to ask, because from an outside perspective, things can appear a lot different. And so you kind of, with that naivety of being new to the group, you can ask those questions that may have been overlooked by the rest of the party, a fresh set of eyes. So it really helps kind of rejuvenate the party in that respect. And I found as a DM, it kind of helped to kind of freshen things up as well in the approach. And because you're bringing somebody else in who has different motives, has different ideas and different outlook on the world, so it helps to kind of liven things up and to change things up in your group. So that's definitely a positive. You could also argue that with having to catch people up, that it can sometimes be a con, because you are then spending more time relaying information that's already out there if you're going deep into RP, or otherwise you're then having to assume that they've already caught up outside of session if you're kind of glossing over that RP element and are just going forward with the story from there or with the adventure. So it can be a double-edged sword in that respect if you don't want to embrace that whole retelling of stories, then that can be a bit of a drag on time if that's something that you didn't want to do. But I would say that more than that, that's kind of, I'd say, a minor point, really. A more major point about bringing new PCs into the group is kind of goes back to what I was saying before about that dynamic, is that it gives you as a DM another person to then fit into your world, and from trying to fit the vision that player has for their character into your world, into the story that you're telling collectively with everyone else. It's a really great way to kind of kickstart your creativity and to start creating and building more stuff within your world to then give that character something to anchor onto. And with Brina, that was certainly the case. I hadn't really considered the Underdark much beforehand. In fairness, I did suggest, actually, I gave a few suggestions to Angelique on what character would fit quite well. One of the things I mentioned was a deep gnome, but because they were due to come up at some point anyway going forward. And in the same way as the Aarakocra, I also suggested, because they were going to be involved in the story, so it'd be an easy way to bring them in through that. But obviously that was just suggesting a race. I hadn't suggested where they came from or the other aspects of that, and that just kind of kickstarted that creative process. Then seeing her backstory and what she kind of felt the character was coming from then meant I could start building around that as well. And so that collaborative process meant that it feels like the world's even more fleshed out than it was before. And that's never a bad thing as a world builder, to feel like there's more there for people to explore, rather than this blank canvas that you're going to paint when they get a bit closer to it. So yeah, that was a really nice thing to do. It felt really good for me, and I think it reflected with the players as well. There's a lot of lore which has been touched upon in the last couple of sessions, all relating to this story arc and the party members themselves. One of the things that was really great in session 51, which was on Monday, was then kind of being checked on that, being called up on it, and kind of seal of approval from the players from when they kind of started through conversation, joining the dots together on these different story arcs, these different plot points, and then finding somehow that they were starting to cross and come together and go, you've linked these two. That's great. How did you? That's how that worked. That's fantastic. So in this case, sorry, I just said a lot. That's not very specific. So what I'm referring to in that situation was the party are looking for, Malar in particular is looking for a vial, a potion that cures curses. It's an ancient potion that they haven't, that they were given one of back in Hilberg, but apparently is very rare, and they used it because it cured, I think, Leobrin from possibly turning into a werewolf, so they used that to cure him. But after Fleeting Look got bitten, along with 2 others, then found there were no other versions of that curse, and simply curing the curse via a spell isn't enough for such an ancient curse as lycanthropy. It needs something more specific. Which is the kind of driving force behind Malar wanting to head to these mountains, because supposedly one of these mountains, fitting the description of the Eyrie, which is the place the Aarakocra hail from, the monastery, seems to be the location of this potion of Cure Curse. So obviously Malar wants to go there because he's got people he needs to cure for lycanthropy. It was Fleeting Look, but that's been circumvented by Seth doing dealings with the old voice, which doesn't sound at all bad. But yes, he's been cured. Fleeting's been cured, and Seth has been given powers as part of that bargain, which will be unearthed as he levels up. So we'll see that as time goes on. But relating to that, the Sverfneblin from Sverfhaven, including Brina's mother, who is the lead alchemist of Sverfhaven, are apothecaries and potion brewers mostly. That's the main line of work for them. They also mine, and they kind of use the gems and so on for trading, sometimes for components, but they're mainly one of their main incomes is making these rare and exotic potions. And it just so happened that they were the ones who made the Cure Curse potion. So they made the potion and traded it with the Aarakocra monks. That's how the Aarakocra came into the possession of the potion. But apparently, as Brina relays under the Zone of Truth with her magic wand, a wand that casts Zone of Truth at will, it's pretty insane. There are other things that wand does, but we'll get to that when it happens. But yes, under that spell, kind of relays all this information to the party, and the fact that this potion supposedly was traded with the Aarakocra, and well, actually, in fact, she believes it was stolen by the Aarakocra. That's what she's been told. That's what the Sverf believe, that they had their potion taken from them by the Aarakocra, not as part of a trade. It was stolen. However, the 2 Aarakocra said, well, no, we have been told that we traded equally for it, and then suddenly, we cut off contact with the Sverfs, and so we were trying to get back into contact with them, but they laid out traps for the bird folk to stop them going after them, and so that kind of meant the end of the relationship then. And so there's been a kind of a bitter feud between the 2 since then. And thanks to Leobrin's kind of, I guess, liaising and mediating between the 2 groups, kind of meant that the 2 Aarakocra plus Brina kind of came to an understanding that maybe they don't have any beef with each other, and it's more people from their various organizations that have the issue. But it was just a really nice moment to kind of see the players' eyes light up to realizing that what they're looking for is connected to this new character. She also mentioned that the potion itself can be reverse engineered, because the original recipe has been lost long ago. So that's exactly why they want to get the potion back, because without it, they will never be able to make it again. But if they get a sample of the potion, they can then use that to figure out what was in it, to deconstruct it, and then they can then find out from that exactly what went into it, and then they can remake them after that. So that's kind of the driving force for the Sverfneblin, and that's the main sort of reason why. That's the main reason, as far as her clan's concerned, why Brina has gone to the surface. Finding the trunk that doesn't belong is very much more a personal goal, which she hasn't let the rest of her clan know about. Given that she is a divining wizard, it means that she can see into the future, and so she's a trusted kind of, I guess you could call her like an oracle of sorts to the Sverfneblin. So that she's highly trusted by her clan to carry out what needs to be done, and it's proved useful before. But so that's kind of her motivations, really, and it was just really nice to kind of see that revealed, and for the party to then kind of react to that, and kind of out of character, kind of seeing these different plot hooks coming together. So that was a really nice moment. Speaking of nice moments, session 51 was absolutely crazy. Because essentially it boiled down to a long rest with a couple of extra things happening. So what I was doing in the session was, because this is the first time in a while that the group have been long resting out in the wilderness, they obviously need to make camp. They need to take watches because it's not safe out there up on the hillside. They're outside of civilization. They don't have the sort of the I guess the airs and graces, the luxuries that you get from from urban living than outside in the wilderness. So they had to take watches. I was rolling for random encounters, and I just rolled badly twice, and that meant this triggered encounters of sorts. But it was nice to kind of do it in a different sort of way rather than a standard, oh, you get attacked by a wolf, roll for initiative, let's go. It was good to kind of have encounters that were a bit more, a bit different, a bit less run of the mill. And I would definitely encourage, if you're putting together random encounter sheets yourself, don't just put combat encounters, put a load of different stuff in there. And even if you do put in, say, just a creature, think of a different way of using it that doesn't necessarily have to be a combat encounter. And I think session 51 is a good example of that, of how that worked. So the first random encounter was a swarm of bats, and I seemed to kind of link on what was happening, kind of read the room, read what was happening in the camp at the time. And I think Leobrin had just had a discussion with the Aarakocra about what they were going to do for food. And I was like, oh yeah, of course, the Aarakocra need to eat. They've got to do something. So they agreed to go off hunting. And then I rolled the random encounter, and I accidentally rolled. Well, I say accidentally, I rolled, and we got a swarm of bats. So I thought, okay, rather than just having a swarm of bats appear and attack the party, let's do this. So instead, what happened was that as a result of the Aarakocra going off hunting, which I also rolled for, they didn't do very well in their hunting. They disturbed a swarm of bats on the other side of the thicket where the guys were camped. So you then have this swarm of bats flying through the thicket, and then rather than having a combat encounter, instead everyone had to roll a dexterity saving throw to kind of duck out the way as this huge swarm just flies out of the woods. If you think of kind of Lord of the Rings, when you have the what they call the crows, anyway, those crows sent by Saruman, the Crabbai from Dunland or whatever they're called, fly out over the group. It's kind of like that feeling to it, and they all hide and duck away. So that was kind of the feeling we were going for when these bats suddenly erupt from the bushes. So you have all of the party run the deck saves, trying to hit the deck and get out the way. Two of them, Seth and unsurprisingly Malar, surprisingly Seth, failed their deck saves, and so were bitten by the bats as they came through. And as a result of that, they then had to make a con save because these were diseased bats, so more lingering conditions. So you can see, mechanically, quite a simple idea. That's just one roll, a deck save, see what happens. And then as a result of that, if you fail, you take some damage, and then you have to make a con save because you could contract a disease. So from that, just one sentence, swarm of, or even just one phrase, swarm of bats, one creature, it created this whole encounter that may not have lasted long, but it certainly was flavorful. It fit with the world they were in, made sense kind of at the time as to how it occurred. It just felt right, and it just fitted in well. And I think it offered up a slightly different challenge to a run-of-the-mill combat encounter. The second encounter, again, just rolling random encounter, and it went horribly wrong. Kind of triggered something that was along the road, but wasn't something I was expecting the party to come across yet. So we've had, speaking of plot hooks, a while back, Leobrin found a crystal ball, which was regurgitated out of a dying froglodite, as they called it. I think it was a Banderhob was actually the creature from the book, and he also found this tome on it as well, which was mostly ciphered, but at the end said the blood, and it said, "I'm so cursed." That was it. Anyway, this ball, he was then told by the fortune teller, the elderly lady back in the tavern at Hero's Landing, was belonged to her sister, and basically, in a kind of creepy sort of way, said, seek out my sister, bring her this ball. If you do, your lady, your patron, she'll know, the one that you love. All this information, which would have put Leo Bryn on edge, because, well, how would this old lady know about this? I mean, yes, she's a fortune teller, but that seems like all mumbo jumbo, right? And so that had kind of been brushed under the carpet, put to one side, because a lot of other things have been going on since then. So it was nice to kind of have that come back. And I knew it was going to eventually, but when I rolled for this particular person to turn up, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is happening sooner than expected, but okay, we'll roll with it. This, again, it works. I imagine she'd be in this part of the world anyway, so let's do it. And so Tilda, the elderly peddler woman, appeared, but using her ways, managed to make animal noises, so that it appeared that she was being chased by something ferocious. And unfortunately for her, though, she was not aware that the party were also included a gnome that had a wand that not only can cast Zone of Truth at will, but can also compel those who fail the save to not be able to evade the truth. So they cannot use evasive means to avoid answering questions. If they're asked a question directly, they have to answer honestly. Which meant that after a little back and forth between other party members and her keeping quiet, Seth then asked her directly about whether she was being chased, and she just said, no, I made that up. No. A lovely moment just for them to be like, I knew it, damn it. And then, as a result of that, having more all this lore come out, that this one, Leo Bryn, he has something that belongs to me, you need to give it to me. And speaking of Leo Bryn, there's been one other thing that's quite major for him, really, and that's, you may have noticed in the sessions, every time he uses a spell that's a leveled spell rather than an invocation, I've been asking him to roll a d20, and if he rolls too low, the spell fails. He uses the spell slot and the spell fails, which difficult. It's obviously challenging, obviously a hindrance for him, and this is because of, as has been established, that his patron, the Fey Lady Aranth of the Spring Court, her powers are seeming to wane, and they don't understand how this started, but she's starting to lose her powers, which obviously have been which Leo Bryn kind of channels for his own abilities as a warlock. So while her abilities wane, it also reflects in him that his abilities are starting to wane as well. And so unless action is taken to find what's missing, to find out how to get it back, a nod to him losing the Fairy Fire spell, which was lost when the party had to go through the ritual to bring Neris back to life. He lost one of his spells as a consequence. It's a big blow to him. That had ramifications that perhaps would not have been seen at the time, with the lady starting to lose her own powers. It's being siphoned off somewhere else, and she doesn't understand where, and she has to keep face with the courts of the Feywild. Her family basically told her to kind of, get into hiding. Let's be discreet about this. Get you out of the way so that people don't realise that the Spring Court is starting to lose its magical power, because as soon as that happens, there's going to be a power grab where one of the other courts tries to get into the Spring Court's position as one of the four major courts of the Feywild. So a lot of political manoeuvring and machinations at hand. So and then you've got Leo Bryn, who's just, as a consequence, is just struggling to perform spells sometimes, having a bit of performance anxiety perhaps. And now, with this, Tilda has now sort of offered an alternative, which could be an interesting one to see how the party want to play this going forward. Basically, Tilda has pointed Leo Bryn in the direction of her cart, which she left on the road north of where the party currently are, saying there is an item there, take it, it will help, and that is, if they choose to take it, that is the first step for possibly finding a way to bring his powers back. So, intriguing indeed. What are the but what what will they have to sacrifice? What will he have to sacrifice in order to get? Will he have to sign a contract with this Tilda as well, or the other sister that has yet to appear, or the first sister? There's three sisters. We have to sign a contract with all three of them to then get his powers from them, or do they have other means? There's a lot of questions there, a lot to think about, I would say. So an interesting thing to see going forward, because warlocks and their patrons is a very interesting relationship, guys. If you're running a game, if you're a DM running a game and somebody has a warlock character, like, really think about that relationship, because that partially defines that how that player character is going to engage with the world. But equally, it's a fun relationship to kind of RP out and to work out. It's a significant portion of your warlock's character is their relation to their patron. So, really think about that and see how you can use it in your game. Because at some point or other, they are going to have some kind of communication. These are two entities that are both alive and that have a contract, if you like. They have a tie between them. So there's going to be reasons why they're going to be talking to each other. And obviously the other ramifications that come with that relationship. So yeah, lots of things to think about there. So we also had the revelation of Brina being madly and deeply in love with Brucon. She just blurted it out because of the spell, revealing that in its entirety. We also had, in addition to the rest of the conversation, there were some great RP moments, I think, for all of the characters. Before we get onto that, there was we will go over that now. There'll be a final thing though that's kind of a separate point from that, teasing what may happen in the future. So we'll get to that. But yes, character moments. I think there was one for each of the party members. They really had a chance to shine, and that's the ideal. As a DM for me, that's the ideal session, when everyone has their moment. Everyone gets something they get to do that's cool, fun, interesting, what have you. If you go away from a session thinking, okay, each person had their time to shine tonight, then that is a good session. I don't think there is I don't think that it's possible to go away from a session with that being the case and it being a bad session. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, in the chat, what have you. But to my mind, that seems, if you've done it right, DM, praise be to you. You've done it right. Good job. Keep it up. And I should say on highlights, obviously, the one that prompted the biggest reaction during the stream has to be, again, Under the Zone of Truth, because a lot of things tumble out when truth is being forced from people. That Seth considers fleeting his best friend. It's something that has been it's been teased since the very start, because Fleeting has always regarded Seth as his best friend, and has always had this inner confidence that just with no evidence at all, this complete out of the blue confidence. That's not a pun on Fleeting Look's skin, by the way. That Seth is his best friend, and that how he feels about Seth is reciprocated, and this was not shown outwardly to Fleeting Look at any time by Seth, and so the rest of the party hadn't seen that. They could only take Fleeting at his word, because clearly the actions of Seth weren't showing that. And so it was just a lovely moment to then have Seth revealing that Fleeting Look is indeed his best friend. And just the reaction from me, from Marshall, from Bart, from Angelique, from the entire party, actually, and a big reaction from Dan himself, of course, on that moment, because after 50 sessions, finally, the truth that Seth is best friends with Fleeting Look. It was a very cute moment. It was a lovely moment. Those are the kind of moments that make this game, I think, as special as it is, or at least makes roleplay as special as it is. When you have all of that build up, all of that over so much time, and then suddenly it comes to life. It makes it, it feels real, So yeah, it was a really nice moment. And finally, on nice moments, having Keith after 50 sessions, as was pointed out by Dan in character, 51 sessions, and finally Keith or Almanac comes to visit him again. And as gods go, he's called Keith. That's pretty relaxed. It's just very not what you. It's atypical, I guess, for what you would stereotypically think a god should be like. Keith is kind of the antithesis of that, and that's really nice to kind of play that out. To just have this really casual relationship with Fleeting Look, just turn up like, yeah, all right, mate, how's it going? Like your friend from down the pub, and basically telling him, oh, so Brina, she's one of mine as well, and kind of cluing him in on the fact that the wand that Brina has is taken from this trunk that doesn't belong, and that's why only Fleeting Look and Brina see how bright that this wand shines. The rest of the party can't see it, but because they are agents of Almanac, of Keith, they see like this bright, brilliant light shining from the wand, and so Fleeting Look asks him to turn it down, which makes so much sense. Can you just? I want to be able to see it better. Fine, that's fine. And to just have that kind of coming together again, because we saw Fleeting Look talk more in that moment than we've ever seen him speak in the rest of the sessions. Full credit to Dan on how he plays the character. He tends to be quite reserved. He won't speak unless he's spoken to, generally. And that was a really... or when he does, it's very, I guess, minimalist. He chooses his words carefully, but it's always with devastating effect. And then to have this whole conversation with a god, a literal god, compared to the very little conversation he normally has with a party, it was just, it was a really, again, it was a lovely moment. It was a lot of fun, and I think it teased things up nicely going forward. Now, on the subject of teasing things nicely going forward, we had a bit of that as well with the sending spell. First of all, Malar decided to cast sending so he could communicate to Nerys. Being the team mom that he is, had to communicate with Nerys, who's been left behind in Hilberg, just update her on what's been going on. Also then gave Nerys an opportunity to speak back to him. Now obviously Marta wasn't here, so I role-played Nerys in that session, and basically she just kind of offered her well wishes, and also noted that she was going to the temple because it was evening, and she had also kind of been tasked to look after or watch over the lycanthropic individuals, two of them, Greta Grouse and Hugh Mandeville, the two who currently are have contracted lycanthropy from the werewolf ball all that time ago, and so are kind of waiting in the temple with what's his name, Ventrix, the priest, to kind of watch over them, keep making sure that they don't turn, basically, and having provisions at hand to repel them if such a thing happens. So we had her kind of teasing up, I'm going to go to the temple, look up, watch over them, make sure it's okay, keep an eye on them, as well as doing what she had promised to do in the town anyway, look after her uncle who's currently grieving along with her, possibly do some carpentry as well. So we had that, and then later in the evening, Malar receives a sending spell himself from Ventrix, who warns him that one of the werewolves has escaped. So I want to say about teeing things up, that's something. The party seemingly have a win, but they have left some responsibility behind, and eventually that was going to go wrong, and it just so happened it was in last session that went wrong. So we've had Nerys going to the temple, and then we have a werewolf escaping from the temple. So what happened there? Well, I can't tell you because I don't know, but we will find out what happened there with a very special little stream, maybe an hour or so long, that we'll be doing before the next session. So I'll have a one-on-one session with Marta, who's coming back. We had a chat about this, so it'll probably be from about 4:30 on Monday week. We'll be doing that, so it'll be ahead of the 6 o'clock where we normally have, which we still will have. We'll still have our session at 6 o'clock with the rest of the party, but we're going to find out what Nerys was up to in that time beforehand, and then hopefully she'll be rejoining the party later on in that session. That's the plan we're sticking to, because I thought we've got to find out what she's been up to, especially with the werewolf on the loose. Like, how did Nerys cope with this situation, and what else has she uncovered back in Hilberg? As was teased by by Tilda, the peddler woman, Seth has a bounty on his head. People are looking for him. She knows this. She knows a lot of things that she probably shouldn't know, and it seems incredible that she does know. But anyway, things like that. So there's potentially people out there looking for him. There's business with the Fairfan cultists back in Hilberg, which still hasn't been resolved yet. They're clearly up to something. Who knows what? And obviously the Lady Helene Grenthorpe statue, which is yet to be unpetrified. But Malar is waiting on a greater restoration spell to be delivered to the temple so that he may try that out and hopefully bring her to life. So there's these other spinning plates in the background, while meanwhile the party are heading towards the mountain to the Eyrie in the hopes of getting rid of the Manticores, getting rid of the Druid, who apparently is in charge of the Manticores, possibly saving the hostages, of course, all of these small folk that have been gathered up and taken, and just kind of setting things right, as well as finding the potion of cure curse. These are all reasons they are heading in that direction. So it'd be interesting to see what Nerys does on her own now, without her party to support her in the town, and then to see how she ends up kind of getting back into the fold with them, I guess, how she chooses to go about that, or what prompts her to go in that direction. So we've got all that to look forward to. That's Monday week from 4:30, I'm going to say. From 4:30. I will update you on socials if that changes, but for now, let's say 4:30 Monday week, which is Monday the 5th of October. No, Monday the 28th of September. Apologies, Monday the 28th. We should have that extra little something on top of our regular session, just to make up for the fact that we're away for a week, really, and also to kind of get this one character who's been missing for a little while back into the fold. Going to be interesting to see how that all works out. Now, as I said, we are off next week with no live session on Twitch. But don't worry, guys. There still will be Slice and Dice in your life, because to make up for this, I have 2 premieres going live on YouTube next week. On Monday, we will have the premiere of the it was a live stream last week, actually, the campaign intro to The Cage, where I talk with the DM, Stephen, about the Planescape setting, about Sigil, not Sigil, by the way, it's Sigil. It's spelt Sigil, but it's written Sigil. We talk about that. Talk about what little things that we can expect in the campaign, why he chose it, and also going through each of the 6 player characters and discussing the sort of the good parts, the bad parts, and other interesting facts about those characters, their backgrounds, and so on. So if you missed the live stream, we had some issues during the live stream, and so as a result of that, I have re-recorded sections with Stephen. So I've then edited that all together, and that will all go up nice and clean and new on Monday night at 6 p.m. on our YouTube. And then on Friday, as per usual now on our Friday week on YouTube, every other Friday we have a new session from The Cage going live, session 2, which is titled Reputation. So for those of you who haven't checked out The Cage yet, make sure you do so. Give us a like and a follow on YouTube. Just you can click the link on our Twitch page. There's just one that says catch up, and it's got the YouTube logo. Click on that. It will take you straight to our YouTube channel. If you like what you see, if you want to be notified when new channels go up, including the premieres of these 2 episodes or sessions all about The Cage, make sure you follow us, because it will notify you 30 minutes, I think, ahead of the premiere going live, so you won't miss it. So make sure you do that. Hit that follow button or subscribe button, I think it is, on YouTube. And of course, if you enjoyed what you see here, please do give us a follow on Twitch, or even subscribe. Even consider subscribing. It really does mean a lot, and the more that you guys support the channel, the more we can put out there for you. It just makes everything bigger and better for all of us, and that's the kind of the goal, really. That's the dream. I should say, as I did during the session on Monday, a big thank you to our most recent followers. I couldn't believe it that during the stream we ended up with 3 new followers all in one go. It was Zychez, Dirty Ghetto Kid 12, and Dark Humor Man. Thank you all for following. And of course, before that, Twilight Sorcerer and Day 701 all for following the channel as well. Your support really does mean a lot to all of us here, and it means, hey, if you enjoy what we're doing and we're enjoying what we're doing, then we must be doing something right? Well, anyway, on that sentimental note, thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that gave you some useful insights into what's been going on, where we are now, and what's coming up next here on Slice and Dice. Anyway, until next time, guys, thank you all so much, and have a great weekend. And of course, stay safe. Bye.